Have you ever secretly wondered why some people seem magnetic without even trying? And yet, when you look at yourself, you just don't see it. Do you sometimes question if there's something wrong with you for not feeling beautiful, not in the mirror, not in your presence, not even in your energy? Maybe you've walked into a room and felt invisible even though others noticed. Maybe someone once told you that you're captivating and you smiled, but inside you didn't believe a word. And maybe deep down you've carried this quiet ache. Why do I feel so ordinary when I'm longing to feel radiant? Carl Jung called this phenomenon the ego's blind spot, the strange, cruel truth that we are often the last to see our own light. Because you live inside your presence, you cannot witness its effect. What feels normal to you, your calmness, your gaze, your voice, might be the very thing someone else can't forget. You don't see it, not because it isn't there, but because it's always been there, and what's constant becomes invisible. This isn't about physical features or perfection. This is about your energy, the kind that softens people's walls, lingers after you leave, and pulls others in when you're not even trying. This is about the beauty behind your awareness, the spiritual and psychological magnetism that only becomes clear when you finally turn inward. So let's begin the journey of uncovering what others have sensed in you all along. Not by changing yourself, but by finally seeing yourself through the eyes of truth. Because you were never meant to be ordinary. You were meant to be seen. Have you ever noticed how some people become visibly unsettled around you, fidgeting with their hands, avoiding eye contact, or stumbling over their words, and wondered if it meant they were disinterested or even repelled? It's easy to take it personally, especially if for most of your life you felt like you had to shrink yourself to be accepted. You've probably told yourself, maybe I said too much, or I should have dialed it back, or worst of all, I must not be attractive. But what if that nervousness wasn't rejection at all? What if it were a mirror reflecting not your lack of appeal, but your undeniable presence, a presence they didn't know how to hold? In Jungian psychology, this is what he called a projection overload. When someone unconsciously projects their own insecurities or hidden longings onto you, they don't see you clearly. They see their own emotional chaos stirred awake by your stillness, your strength, or your quiet depth. You haven't done anything to them, but your energy has activated something in them. This happens most often to strong, self-aware individuals who carry a kind of unspoken gravity, the kind that's not loud, not boastful, but simply felt. A woman who radiates a calm self-trust, a man who doesn't chase approval, a person who doesn't need to perform to be noticed. These are the ones who unknowingly disturb the emotional waters around them because they stand as a kind of psychic contrast to everyone still searching for themselves. Think about it. Have you ever been in a room where people either leaned in or pulled away without you doing anything at all? Have you ever received a compliment that felt loaded with confusion, like someone admired you but also resented you? These mixed signals aren't about your words or looks. They are about your emotional frequency. Many men, for example, may act awkwardly around a woman not because she's too much, but because she carries a kind of unplaceable intensity, the kind that demands authenticity. He senses she won't tolerate performative charm or superficiality, and that terrifies the ego. Not because she's wrong, but because she sees through what others ignore. She reflects back to him the parts of himself he hasn't owned yet. Carl Jung believed that what you see in others is often what you have not yet seen in yourself. So when people around you seem uneasy, the question is not, what's wrong with me, but what am I stirring in them that they have not yet integrated? Your presence might be highlighting their inner split, the gap between who they are and who they pretend to be. And here's the deeper truth. When people feel unsafe around your energy, it often has nothing to do with your behavior. It has everything to do with the unconscious fear that your presence demands something real. So the next time someone stumbles over their words or avoids your gaze, pause before shrinking. Ask yourself, could this awkwardness be evidence of my unseen influence? Could their anxiety actually be the soul recognizing something it forgot it was seeking? What if your quiet power doesn't need to be louder, only better understood? Have you ever caught someone stealing a second glance at you? Not out of rudeness or flirtation, but with a kind of bewildered curiosity, as if they just saw something they didn't expect? It's a look that lingers, one that says, I don't know what I just felt, but I need to see it again. And the most surprising part? It often comes when you're doing nothing at all. You're just walking through the grocery store, sipping coffee at a table, or standing quietly in an elevator. No makeup, no special outfit, no performance, and yet something about your energy reaches beyond the physical and pulls people back in for a second look they didn't know they needed. Carl Jung called this kind of moment a numinous experience, a brush with something that feels larger than logic, something symbolic that stirs the unconscious. In your case, it's your aura, the felt vibration of your being that carries the weight of your inner work, your self-trust, your unspoken story. People might not understand why they notice you, but their psyche does. They turn back, not because of what they see, but because of what they feel. In a world flooded with artificial confidence and curated personalities, those who carry real presence stand out like an ancient symbol in a modern city. They remind others of something they've forgotten: authenticity, depth, soul. And the second glance is their unconscious attempt to reconnect with that feeling, to validate that what they just witnessed wasn't a trick of the mind. But here's what most don't realize. Your aura is shaped by what you've survived. It's carved by grief you didn't let harden you. It's built from boundaries you finally learned to hold. It's softened by the love you gave without losing yourself. And it's radiant with truths you no longer try to prove. When you walk into a room with that kind of energetic clarity, people feel it, even if they don't have the words for it. That's why some glance again. Not because they desire you in the superficial sense, but because you carry something rare. Maybe it's a kind of stillness that disrupts their inner noise. Maybe it's a groundedness that unsettles their emotional chaos. Or maybe it's a quiet beauty that doesn't ask to be seen, but cannot be ignored. Let's bring this into real life. You go to a small dinner party and barely speak, but someone pulls you aside after and says, "There's just something about you." You're walking your dog, and a passerby gives a small nod, then turns back with a half smile, as if you reminded them of someone they miss. Or you're at work, unnoticed for months, until someone confesses, "You have this vibe," like you really see people. These moments aren't about ego, they're about energetic impact. Jung believed that we are constantly influenced by unconscious archetypes, symbolic figures within the collective psyche. When someone glances at you twice, they may be responding not just to you, but to an archetype you unknowingly embody. The wise one, the healer, the mirror, the wanderer, the quiet storm. You become a living symbol of something they've long buried in themselves. And that second glance? It's the psyche whispering, "Pay attention." So the next time it happens, when a stranger stares too long, when someone forgets their words around you, when people tell you, "You feel familiar, but I don't know why," don't doubt yourself. Ask instead, What part of me did they just meet? What memory did my aura awaken in their soul? And perhaps the deeper question is this: what happens when you finally realize that your presence doesn't just walk into a room, it leaves echoes behind you? Why do you always dismiss the compliments you secretly crave? Why is it that the very praise you long to hear never quite lands in your heart? Why do you nod politely at compliments yet feel like a fraud inside? This isn't mere humility. It's a silent war between your self-image and your deeper self. Many strong souls, especially those born into toxic families, learn early to distrust kindness. When love came with conditions or praise was laced with manipulation, even genuine admiration now feels like a trick. You've built walls around your self-worth, not out of arrogance, but as a survival mechanism. In everyday life, this disconnect becomes painfully clear. A stranger compliments your voice, your energy, or your presence, but you brush it off. A coworker says you're calming to be around, but you secretly think, if only they knew how anxious I really am. A friend calls you radiant, and you reply with a joke, as if beauty is something you're not allowed to claim. Carl Jung would say, this is the shadow at work, not the darkness in you, but the unseen light you've disowned. The parts of yourself that you've banished from your self-image still leak through. And often, they're the very parts people fall in love with. Jung teaches that the psyche splits when our environment cannot reflect our full truth. In toxic families, your gifts might have been threatening to those who couldn't handle them. So, you buried them. You learned to be smaller, quieter, and more acceptable. And yet, the unconscious cannot lie. It reveals itself in your walk, your voice, and your gaze. The world keeps trying to mirror your radiance back to you, and you keep turning away. Not because it isn't there, but because it hurts to see what you were never allowed to own. But here's the paradox. The people who compliment you are not flattering you, they're remembering you. They are reflecting back pieces of your original self that you forgot in order to survive. What if their words are not exaggerations, but sacred messages? What if your inability to receive praise is the final wound asking to be healed? This gap between who you think you are and who you really are is not a flaw. It's a map. Every time someone sees something beautiful in you that you cannot see, that is a portal, a clue. A moment to pause and ask, why does this truth feel like a lie to me? In Jungian terms, their praise is not ego inflation, it is individuation trying to happen. Your shadow is not just your pain, it also hides your inner gold. So, next time someone offers you a compliment that makes your chest tighten or your stomach flutter, don't dismiss it. Let it linger. Write it down. Sit with it like an old friend who remembers something about you that you forgot. What if they are right? What if your soul is already shining through and your only job now is to catch up to your own light? Let's talk about it. What compliment have you received lately that you couldn't believe but secretly wanted to? Have you ever wondered why some people keep appearing in your life without any real reason? Why do they ask questions they already know the answer to, or linger in your presence, even when they have no purpose for staying? There's a subtle, almost invisible magnetism at play, and it has less to do with logic and more to do with energy. In everyday life, this phenomenon often shows up as someone repeatedly asking for your opinion on things they could easily Google, or colleagues who somehow need your help with a task you barely know more about than they do, or strangers who strike up conversations that go nowhere just to keep the interaction going. On the surface, it seems random or even annoying, but beneath it is something deeper. Jung would call this a projection of unconscious longing onto a figure that carries symbolic charge. That's you. People are drawn to the energy you don't even know you're giving off. And this attraction isn't always romantic or intentional. Sometimes it's the comfort you radiate. Other times, it's the clarity or calmness you embody when others feel lost in their own chaos. What they crave isn't your advice, it's your presence. Your energy becomes a kind of emotional safe zone where others feel more human, more seen, more settled. But why don't they just say that? Because they don't know, not consciously. Jung taught us that we are often compelled by what we do not understand. The psyche searches for symbols, resonance, and meaning, even when the ego thinks it's just small talk. So when someone circles around your orbit with no obvious motive, it's likely that their unconscious is responding to something in you that they cannot name. Perhaps your stillness reminds them of a lost innocence. Perhaps your groundedness balances out their inner fragmentation. Perhaps your very existence unsettles a part of them that longs for healing. And this is where things get complicated. Because while you may sense the pattern, you likely don't know what to do with it. You may dismiss these encounters, thinking it's just a coincidence or politeness. But what if it's more than that? What if people keep finding you because you mirror something they need to integrate within themselves? And what if your refusal to fully see your own radiance keeps you from understanding just how powerful your presence really is? Strong souls often become emotional anchors in a drifting world. They unintentionally provide others with a lighthouse when the waters get rough. But in doing so, they also risk being misunderstood, overused, or emotionally drained. And unless you understand why people are drawn to you, you may not protect yourself properly. You may mistake emotional dependency for connection, or silence your needs because someone else's attraction to your energy feels flattering. So the next time someone lingers longer than necessary, ask yourself, what part of me are they responding to? Is it my light, my calm, my strength, or something I haven't yet discovered? And more importantly, am I honoring the gift of my presence or giving it away without recognition? Your aura speaks louder than your words. It carries your history, your healing, and your hidden power. And sometimes, the people who find you over and over again are simply trying to touch a truth within you that they can't yet find within themselves. Does that mean you owe them access to it? Not always, but recognizing the pattern gives you back the power to choose who gets to linger and who simply needs to move on. So tell me, has this been happening to you lately? Who keeps showing up around you? And what might they be silently asking you to reflect back to them? Have you ever walked into a room and felt the air shift, like someone's smile faded too quickly or their tone turned sharper without warning? Why is it that your mere presence can make another woman withdraw, compete, or subtly criticize you when you've done nothing to provoke it? It's a confusing pain, isn't it? The kind that makes you question yourself. But what if their coldness was never about you, but about what you silently awaken in them? In reality, many women have lived entire lives unconsciously comparing themselves to others. Especially in midlife, when unprocessed emotions begin to surface, the presence of someone confident, grounded, or even quietly radiant can stir a storm they never prepared to face. Maybe you've noticed this in friendships that suddenly turn sour, in coworkers who minimize your achievements, or even in close family members who begin to resent your growth. The more you heal, the more they seem to shrink away. Why? Carl Jung's concept of the shadow explains this beautifully. He said we all carry disowned parts of ourselves in our unconscious, traits we were told not to express. desires we suppressed, or qualities we secretly envy in others. When someone walks in embodying what we've buried, our unconscious reacts. It doesn't say, "She reminds me of what I could be." Instead, it says, "There's something about her I don't trust." That's projection, and it's not rare, it's everywhere. Especially between women, where society has long taught us to compare, compete, and silence each other's light. But here's the truth you were never told. Their discomfort in your presence may be the echo of your wholeness meeting their fragmentation. Your quiet confidence might reflect the self-worth they haven't claimed. Your emotional clarity might mirror the confusion they still carry. Even your kindness can trigger those who never received or gave it freely. Think about it. Have you ever been judged not for your flaws, but for your joy? Not for your failures, but for your ability to rise? And still, you may ask, should I dim myself so others feel safe? Should I shrink so they won't react? Jung would say no, because their shadow is their responsibility, not yours. Your only task is to remain aware, to see through the mask of coldness or jealousy and recognize the deeper wound it hides. When you understand this, you no longer take it personally. Their reaction becomes a mirror of their inner world, not a verdict on your worth. This awareness is liberating. It lets you love without needing to be liked. It frees you to shine without guilt. And perhaps most importantly, it invites compassion, not just for yourself, but for the women still fighting the parts of themselves they see in you. Maybe they were never taught how to hold beauty without fear, or how to admire strength without comparison. But you have the chance to break that cycle, not by pleasing, but by being. So here's the question I leave you with. Who have you stopped trusting, not because they harmed you, but because they couldn't hold your light? And what would happen if, instead of shrinking, you chose to stay open and let their reaction reveal what part of themselves they've yet to meet? What if the love you've been waiting for is simply your own gaze, finally turning inward with tenderness? What if the validation you seek from others is a sacred mirror trying to show you something you've forgotten? For so long, many of us have mistaken attractiveness for perfection or performance. We've been taught to chase approval, to compare our worth against airbrushed illusions, and to shrink in the face of someone else's beauty as if there wasn't enough light to go around. But there comes a moment, often in the quiet of midlife, when you stop performing and start remembering. You realize that the power others see in you is not something you must earn. It is something you must reclaim. Carl Jung spoke of individuation as the return to the self, the inward spiral that brings you back to the truth beneath the masks. This truth is not loud. It doesn't beg to be seen. It emanates. And when you finally look at yourself through the eyes of compassion instead of criticism, something ancient and radiant awakens. Not the persona you've polished for survival, but the essence that was always there, soft, wild, and quietly magnetic. That essence is what people respond to, even when you don't see it. It is why strangers linger in conversation. It is why some smile at you without reason. It is why your presence can shift a room without a word. Yet how often have you dismissed this? How many times have you brushed off a compliment thinking it was exaggerated or undeserved? How many years have you waited for someone else to crown you without realizing that your light does not need permission to shine? Real attractiveness is not built in the mirror. It is built in moments of integrity, in how you carry your pain without hardening, in the way your eyes soften when you listen. It is the quiet courage to be exactly who you are when no one is watching. It is your laugh after heartbreak, your stillness after chaos, your gentleness after being misunderstood. Some will envy this, some will be drawn to it without knowing why. But none of it matters unless you see it for yourself. Because the moment you do, you stop seeking and start radiating. You no longer need to prove, you no longer contort to be chosen. You become the chooser, and not from a place of arrogance, but from a deep-rooted calm that knows your worth is not up for debate. This is what Jung meant when he said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Not to become someone else's fantasy, not to play small so others feel comfortable, but to inhabit the truth of your being with quiet grace. So take this moment right now and breathe it in. You are not just attractive, you are resonant. You carry a frequency shaped by everything you've survived and softened through. The world has already been responding to it. The only question is, are you ready to respond to? Are you willing to stop doubting the very beauty others have been trying to reflect back to you? Your light begins not when they see it. It begins when you believe it. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real reason you found this message today. Not to be told you are beautiful, but to finally remember it. If this touched something sacred inside you, don't let it fade into silence. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your presence here is not just support, it's resonance. And if you feel moved to give back, your donation becomes a quiet but powerful gesture that helps keep this light alive for others still walking in the dark.